controller that's like 15 years old, you're not getting that chip. But because Apple's brought it inboard into the die, they're starting to eliminate and getting a supply chain efficiency from having just one SKU. And then the other question I had, Shaheen, is the ARM thing I think is predicated on what RISC processing, reduced instruction set versus complex. I don't want to bore the audience, but do you have a clever way of describing that?
Well, in a way, yes. I think that about something like 30, 40 years ago, there was a big change in how chips were designed in terms of the basic instructions of what to do. And basically, the idea was that if we could simplify the instructions, we can actually make it go faster. So instead of telling somebody, go make an omelet, you would say, go buy eggs, crack egg, throw in pan, add oil. So you kind of componentized it down to the lower levels. And the idea was that by doing that, you really needed fewer instructions to get a lot of things done. It's like we got the basic math operations, and from there you can build calculus on top of it, right? And the change in memory density and memory prices made that possible. So reduced instruction set computing, RISC, became RISC versus complex instruction set processing, CISC. And x86, the Intel chips, are based on the CISC instruction set in the old way. And a whole bunch of others are RISC, including ARM, and a new one called RISC-V, which is open systems oriented and is really gaining fast. Now, this traditionally has made Intel chips just be technologically a little bit more just bloated, right? They're old style and they're carrying a lot of luggage. The counter argument is that all of these chips right now have a macro architecture where the instruction set applies, and a micro architecture where you kind of translate the whatever you had to essentially the same kind of RISC instruction set at a lower level, which is why Apple can translate x86 applications and still run them so fast, right? So in that sense, the instruction set itself is really not that material. I'm kind of feeling like I'm in a minority saying that because a lot of my friends don't agree with me. But I also think that they're entitled to be wrong. So I think I got it right, and instruction set really isn't material that much, but it is also not nothing. So in addition to instruction set, there's also intellectual property, IP, where you want to do a particular capability and you go and license that IP and you bring it onto your die and use that. And ARM has just a giant store of IP that you can go and license all over the place. And that's really important. Now, when Pat Gelsinger took over Intel, one of the most significant things he did with Intel was to basically open up their IP. And basically the merchant chip support is now reporting directly to him. So the whole chip industry thing is changing in a big way. And like within a few decades, AI is going to be doing most of the designing anyway. So I'll pause there.
Yeah, Shaheen, I just want to mention one point. The reason why I say that, ASML will not be a monopoly because they can't survive by themselves too. Because semiconductor process is very complicated, and all the equipments, materials, and all the process are interconnected. So for ASML, if there's no mask from Japan, they can't work. So all of them have to be, so-called working with each other very closely. So by ASML trying to hold the bait on the rest is also not possible. But one thing I have to agree is, yes, most of the important processes are now ally of USA.
I totally agree with you. And as you mentioned, there are lots of other dependencies that are pretty important. There are other U.S. and foreign, Philips and KNL10 Core, something like that, and a few others are very important suppliers here, as well as the die suppliers. However, when you go from 10 nanometers to 7 and then to 5, and now TSMC has 3 nanometers on the roadmap, like next year or two after that, and then like 1 nanometer after that, when you get to that point, you do need new processes. And the extreme ultraviolet process that ASML managed to make work was a highly risky process. And that's why not a lot of people pursued it. But they managed to do it. So they cracked the code, and of course, they're reaping the benefits. So I think that super high end, ASML really is the pivot point right now. Not that others aren't, But if you want to do 5 nanometers, I don't think you can do it without ASML.
Yeah,
So,
you need ASML, but you need a very good mask to have that kind of precision, and that's from Japan.
okay, so
Yes, yes.
a quick, there's a headline from Gizmodo 13 hours ago that I just tweeted to the Tech News Twitter account right now. And it says Intel CEO hopes to make a chip that's good enough to win Apple back someday. So how, I'm curious, Shin, how do you think that the industry is is feeling today with this after as a result of this Apple's new laptop announcement? How does that feel if you're Intel and or Dell and or other key players?
Oh, they have leapfrogged. And, I think I mean, the thing is that not everybody needs the high end, right? So there's still a lot of volume at the low end. And 10 nanometers at Intel. Also, when you say 10 nanometers 7.5, not all of them are the same thing. The real metric is transistor density. And for example, Intel's 10 nanometer has more transistors per square inch than like TSMC's 10 nanometer does. So the difference is not exactly that big. However, they're ahead and they're going to kick butt. Now, Intel has in fact outsourced some of its manufacturing to TSMC to be able to play with that model.
Yeah.
And they're also dialing up their packaging capabilities. So all these chiplets, if you're going to go build a city, what are these building blocks that you bring in? And Intel has some packaging expertise and advantages that they are starting to play. So it is entirely possible that in another like 2 years or 3 years, they could get ahead because they've kind of refashioned the whole. It's no longer like Intel versus TSMC. It's more like we're all making all the different chips, and I've got a packaging strength, and I'm combining it with TSMC's, fabrication strengths, and I'm going to do something really novel. That's quite possible. I don't think he's exaggerating.
Yeah. Okay. So did Paul jump out? He did. So thank you for the insights there, Shahin. So the top story today, happy Tuesday, October 19th, is all about all of the Apple products that they announced. And more so than the products, it's more about these chips is really the really interesting thing because, and the reason we're talking about the chips so much for the first 30 minutes so far today is because Apple announced the M1 processors about a year ago. And what was the first device? It was like a Mac Mini was the first device they put it in.
MacBook Air.
Yeah, the
A
MacBook
MacBook
Air.
Air and a Mac Mini, yes.
And the reviews to those devices were phenomenal. People were like, "Holy shit, I can't believe this is a game changer for those devices." And then we knew that they were going to come out 12 hours ago with the new MacBook Pros. And we knew they were going to upgrade those M1 chips that were already impressing the pants off of reviewers. So they showed, the new upgraded processors. They're called the M1 Pro and the M1 Max, and they are basically 2x and 4x, to oversimplify, even double and quadruple, again, oversimplification, of the M1 that was already very impressive. And so people watched this live stream that we watched together yesterday it was quite eye opening. I got to say, I think people are quite impressed and are very eager to get their hands on these. And what this does is basically allow video editors and 3D graphic folks and all of the VR community to do everything on a laptop. These are now more powerful than previous desktop machines, and that leads me to my next thought, which is, they've yet to do an M1 ish inside of the Mac, the Mac. What do they call them now? Mac Pros, the desktop machines, right? So
I think they're going to need that Intel architecture for a bit because there's some challenges with legacy stuff running on Windows on ARM. If you have a M1, sorry to jump in. If you have an M1, if you're running like Windows 10, Windows 11, you're running a version of that called WOA because it's running Windows on ARM processor instead of x86 or x64. So like there's drivers and things like that that are missing. So I think for the pros, they're probably going less risky. And I don't know, Shaheen.
I think it's mostly a question of supply and where they want to allocate it. I think that they have all the other issues solved. From some reports, they've got something like 50% of TSMC's capacity. And of course, they buy in such volumes that they get attention. And I know TSMC is trying to dish it out and try to kind of accommodate others as well. But they get really a lion's share of that. And so from what I see, it's mostly product marketing decisions rather than engineering decisions.
So interestingly, in the event yesterday, they also came out with the AirPods 3, which look like AirPod Pros, but without the sealing, the ear sealing element, which I think is nice. I'm not a fan of that like ear plugging sensation, for a lower price. And there was notably no mention of software really. And they have the Mac OS Monterey coming out probably in a few days, but they didn't really address it, interestingly. But Monterey release candidate has just come out, which means that's like RC1, RC2. That means that, yeah, that's geek speak for the public version is probably a week away. And in the new release candidate that the developers are playing with, they reintroduced Safari's old tab design, which was driving people crazy.
Yes, please, thank you.
Yes, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are relieved about that. And then similarly on the software front, Apple says iOS 15.1 is ready to come out next week. So, and watch and TV, all the devices all getting a new operating system upgrade to 15.1, which means it's a more stable version of iOS 15, which means hopefully they get a few more of these 0-day vulnerabilities plugged up. And that is going to be a really interesting question. It's now Apple versus Pegasus to figure out if they can stop governments around the world from getting into your phone, because currently they have no problem at all getting all up into your phone. There's now several 0-day exploits. And speaking on that point, our friend Data, who I should ping in right now, who's a cybersecurity researcher who's been using his YouTube channel, has continued in recent days to tighten the screws on Apple and showing 0-day exploits live on his YouTube account, separate from Pegasus, and making the argument that he had been employed, hired, what have you, by government agencies to do this kind of stuff. And when you are hired in that capacity, you work with a camera over your desk, looking at everything you're doing at all times. And he described the whole process of how cybersecurity, leading cybersecurity researchers are employed by government agencies, and what that's like. And now he says, I'm done with it. It's sort of the 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 hacker version of Snowden in a sense, which is kind of interesting that there hasn't been a hacker version of Snowden, where Snowden had access to a lot of information of what was going on in the intelligence agencies, and so do some very elite hackers. And so far, none of those elite hackers have come out and blown any whistles about what the governments are really doing, and they're definitely doing some stuff. Oh boy, are they? That was one of the big revelations of Pegasus, but it's as was known. The reason that we've not really heard much about Pegasus in the U.S. is because it's almost guaranteed. In fact, it is guaranteed that the U.S. they don't need Pegasus because they have their own version of it, essentially.
Yeah,
And
we've had Prism. I don't know how active Prism still is, but that was what Snowden or whoever revealed, right?
so, but it'll be more interesting when the actual researchers, which normal folks would call hackers, come out and say, yeah, we were the people actually responsible for this, and now we're starting to question if that's a good thing or not, and that's what Data is sort of doing. So I just pinged him to see if he'll join us again, as he has done in the past. So The next big story after all those Apple announcements is, well, what do you know? And as Cheryl knows, I do not make up this list. This is a preset list that I read every day of the top news. And the number 2 story after all the Apple stories is that the NSA, the CISA, and the FBI, that's all of America's leading cyber intelligence community, say that a ransomware group called Black Matter is attacking critical U.S. infrastructure, including the food sector. Oh, did I not make that point very clear when the state hackers were happening with the Colonial Pipeline and the meat production? I said, very interesting. They're attacking energy and food because, as you hear me rant endlessly, if you want to become independent and self-sovereign, there's only 3 things you need to worry about: energy, water, and food. So the fact that state actors, state hacker groups are attacking our energy and food and water, and we read the water headline, 4 days ago, Chris? Of the So make note, this is cyber warfare, is what this is. You are seeing the early.
Reminder that Chris doesn't drink water anymore.
Chris is phoning from a burner water bottle right now. So
a burner phone. No, I don't drink water at all.
So this headline says that the NSA, the DHS, shine light on Black Matter ransomware threat to food industry, demands up to $15 million. A government advisory published Monday. That's today. It's still Monday in the U.S. Warned that Black Matter ransomware attackers are going after U.S. critical infrastructure, including food and agricultural organizations, and demanding exorbitant payouts. It's the latest joint alert from the Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, and the FBI and the National Security Agency. This time about a form of ransomware that's first emerged in July. It comes just days after a similar alert about ransomware threats to water and wastewater facilities. Oh, gee, water and food and energy pipelines. I wonder if there's a connection here about my rantings and ravings about you need to take control of your own water, food, and energy, folks. This is your hourly update to rewild yourself and undomesticate your cat-like self, because these government structures are going to be coming under an intense attack for the water and food and energy. So you can hope as a cat that mommy and daddy, the government, are going to put food and water in your bowl. And you forgot how to catch birds and go find a stream to drink from. And what I'm telling you is the as much as you believe in that the supermarkets are always going to have food because the governments have this shit all figured out and that this shit is dependable. Well, that was true when they weren't when there wasn't a cyber war attacking those pipelines and supply chains. So don't depend on mom and dad to bring water and food into your bowl every day. You need to supply your own source of water and food. As a cat, you're a fucking cat. You can catch birds, y'all. Go do that.
Guys, I think Tyler's right. They were out at Doritos today.
Exactly right. And by the way, they're locking up the Oreos in San Francisco due to all the shoplifting. We covered that story yesterday. So, so the story in this article says this advisory highlights the evolving and persistent nature of criminal cyber actors and the need for collective public and private approach to reduce the impact and prevalence of ransomware attacks, says Eric Goldstein, Executive Assistant Director for Cybersecurity at the CISA, the government's leading cybersecurity agency. Black Matter seeks between $80,000 and $15 million in cryptocurrency, including Bitcoin and Monero, to unlock its victims' systems. The government agency said Black Matter ransomware developers operate on ransomware as a service model, where they lease some illicit responsibilities and share in the profits with the other scammers who use their malware. The report doesn't name the 2 food and agricultural organizations mentioned in the alert, and CISA referred questions about their identities to the FBI, which did not immediately respond to a request for comment. There you go, journalists asking the sources for comments again. Journalism. and refusing to respond to journalists because the FBI doesn't really benefit by sharing much at this moment in time with you, dear journalist. But in September, 2 separate agricultural organizations suffered ransomware attacks. Yep, and that's back even before September. I said, you know what, guys? I think they're attacking key infrastructure here. Have you noticed that? Matter of fact, that was like 4 months ago that I made that connection, right when they attacked the meat plant, the beef producer, where I said, oh, first time was oil, second time was food. I think they're going after key infrastructure, like super, super key infrastructure, water, food, energy. The report doesn't name the food. Oh, yeah. Intruders first breached New Cooperative, an Iowa grain collective, which resulted in the business taking some of its systems offline and warning of food supply disruptions. Now, normally, when we talk about food supply chain disruptions, on a normal day in 2020, 2019, 2018, you would shrug your shoulders and be like, supply chain, whatever, who cares? Big whoop. I got Taco Bell.
Doritos out of stock. They'll be back tomorrow.
Right. We got Taco Bell. Taco Bell's rocking. Oh, by the way, Taco Bell has about half of their menu still. Just to highlight that point. If you tried to go to a Taco Bell today, half of the items don't exist anymore due to supply chains. And so because of the ship, now this is where it gets really crazy. And this is where we got to play my favorite little theme song here for y'all. Because is it possible that the supply chain brouhaha that's going on globally is actually a bit of being manipulated by government agencies to their advantages against their potential enemies and whatnot? Do you follow where I'm going here? And that these cyber attacks are doubling down right at the moment where the supply chains are already quite fragile. Because if a state who wants to make America look bad, you have two choices there, who routinely attack America in this way, if they can get Americans to think and realize my grocery store shelves are empty now 3 weeks in a row, WTF, what the fuck's going on here? You're going to lose faith in the American system because they can no longer put cat food in your cat bowl. And there's both of those states who've been attacking America historically have gone through periods where they had no cat food to put in their cat bowls.
You know what? It's funny you say the cat food stuff because the cat food is true. Like, I have cats. I admit it. I'm proud. But the cat food does it goes on a run sometimes, and the cat litter. Like, sometimes you can't get cat litter or cat food. Like, I'm not even joking.
But my point is that Russia and China have both gone through moments where they didn't have shit to put on their shelves. And they understand how damaging that was to the psyche of its people and the people's trust in their governments and etc. Do you see where I'm going? So the fact that they're attacking these critical food agricultural companies and the meat companies and the supply chains and the oil pipelines, this is cyber warfare. But they're doing it in a very slow process at the moment. God help us if they really ramp up and go full throttle with this shit. And that's why Biden told Putin in Geneva about 3 months ago, lay off our critical infrastructure or we're going to attack your critical infrastructure, which is your natural gas pipeline to Europe, which is how you make money. So black matter, which was, had ties to Russia, even geographically, and our intelligence agencies knew this, disappeared one day, and we read that headline. Oh, wow, what do you know? Our evil disappeared. And I said, oh, gee, I wonder if they're going to reappear in Ukraine or, Romania. Oh, what do you know? 1 month later, oh, wow, there's a new gang called Black Matter that just materialized in Ukraine. Oh, gee, wow, who could have predicted that? To add some plausible deniability that this is Russia doing this. Make no mistake, this is Russia doing it in this particular case. So it's going to get very interesting. But please don't fall victim to the notion that just because you've always had food at the supermarket, that is a given, especially when that's what's being attacked.
Can I add a little bit of context to
Sure.
that point as it relates to energy? So I was scrolling my Facebook feed just now, and my friend Sarah in Colorado, she writes this: I'm 26 miles from the nearest town with my 2 kids and semi-mobile mother. We lost power 45 minutes ago in a walloping windstorm. So that seems to be of natural cause. Currently, my mother is tucked into bed with her normal bedside lamp working because it's plugged into my river battery backup generator that will run easily all night. The kids and I have plenty of light upstairs with my Gold Zero Torch 500 that's also powering up my cell phone. I'll lay everything out in the light of day tomorrow and show you all the gear if you're interested in what I generally have with me when I'm traveling to places with sketchy utilities. So her case, it seems to be of natural causes due to the windstorm, but I'm really quite impressed with the kit that she has with her to be able to provide power through the night. And it's almost winter, right? I don't know what the weather is, but it's got to be.
Oh,
It's not room temperature, right, in Colorado this
yes.
time of year.
You
So
just hit on a really particularly concerning point here, which as we get into winter here, watch out for the energy attacks, because if you can shut down these energy pipelines or supply chains in the middle of winter, oh shit's going to get very real very quickly.
well, look at Texas last year.
Yeah, but imagine if it was Chicago in the winter when that happened.
Yeah, yeah.
You're talking millions of people that will have to flee and drive thousands of miles.
I am curious, Chris. Remember you and Cal was talking in the back channel about this food supply chain room that you say that the libertarians are trying to reference Singapore on something. What was that about?
They were talking about how well Singapore basically turned from the 1960s into what it is now. From when Singapore broke off from Malaysia to what it is now.
I wanted to point out these points because Singapore have to deal with food supply every day because we don't produce enough, of course, to feed ourselves, even when we are a small country. So last year was pandemic, right? So when the borders shut down, we were actually in a very difficult situation because, well, the food cannot come in, right?
Well, you don't
So
have any land to grow food. That's the problem.
yes, I mean, yeah, there is some vertical farming, but it's not enough, of course. So luckily there's a government stockpile, but of course that's not enough. But because most tourism is stopped, but we actually flew our Singapore Airlines all around the world to air freight food into Singapore. So
Yep.
that's how we get past it. So yeah, it's not easy.
So let me read the.
What's going to make it worse as well? This is going to create panic, and people are going to start panic buying and
Precisely the point.
stockpiling,
Oh,
and
thank you,
that's just
DJ.
going to make it worse.
Precisely. If you don't remember, this is how. Let me just paint that picture for everybody. Give you a little pre-glimpse. Let's jump to that part of the movie because that's critical to understand how this plays out. Everything is nice and rosy and calm as long as the water is running through the pipes. The second the water stops running through the pipes or the gasoline stops running through the pipes, as you just saw in the UK, holy shit, does it go from normal to a very concerning very, very quickly. You don't have time to calibrate for that. It goes from the gas is coming out of the pipe, everything's fine. The water is coming through the pipes, everything's fine, to all of a sudden, there's no water coming through the pipe. Holy shit, what the fuck do we do now? The gas stations no longer have
I mean,
gas. Oh
I mean,
shit. Everyone stops what they're doing and panics and goes to the gas station and they start hoarding, just like with the toilet paper hoarding. And you go from everything's fine, everything's calm, we got this under control to, oh shit, everybody buy it now. Hoard, 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 which makes it exacerbates the problem.
because before with the gas and petrol, people used to buy like normal amounts. Like people would go to the
Right.
station, buy £10 or £20.
Right.
But when we had that panic, everyone was buying full tank.
Right.
So that that
Now,
then minimizes
make no
the
mistake,
supply.
that
Yeah,
panic is
but that's going to happen with
precisely
food.
the objective of this whole operation. Is to get American citizens into the point where they panic, because in that time of panic, you no longer trust your government fundamentally to supply you with the critical essential shit you need to survive. This is no longer about tax percentages and GDP and random bullshit that really means nothing to you at the end of the day. This is your existential threat survival stuff fundamentals. And now you,
So
as an American, are thinking differently about your government than you've ever had to do, or your grandparents have ever had to do, going back generations.
but
Tyler, this could work out another way, though. This could rally Americans together if they can convince everyone that it's Russia, and the United States may be forced to attack Russia. Putin could actually be getting very close to putting us on the cusp of World War III. Okay, it's not like the Russians haven't done this before with the Cuban Missile Crisis. They got us right to the cusp. And if you have that bad of a supply shortage, I'm not sure the American people turn on our government if it's clear that it's Russia causing it, as opposed to Biden gets forced into a
Well,
situation
Ken,
of having to take a military action.
the problem
Because
with that is you have half of
well,
America itching at any opportunity to blame Biden for anything.
yeah, but I agree with that. But I do believe that Putin's playing with fire here. I really do.
And the other piece to that is that
Well,
people who are looking to attack the government, philosophically speaking, they're buying into Russian propaganda that's being peddled on social media, right? So I
Correct.
think that
Now,
it's a
oh,
dual front. It's
oh,
not just about the utilities and the food and
oh,
the yeah, it's
Lakeisha. By the way,
psychological.
the Republicans will already say, you're trying to blame Russia again. We already went through that. It was called Russiagate, and it turned out you guys were fucking lying. We're not buying this bullshit again. It's Russia's fault again.
but just to add one thing, guys, on a different perspective, some of this can be cyber, which I agree with, and I think is coming on, and a lot of this has to do with AI automation and where we should be. But then we also have to look at the containers. There's about 70 containers in the U.S., 52 in Long Beach and L.A. I'm talking about vessels. I'm sorry for clarification, which takes about a month and a half or somewhere between 4 to 5 weeks to truly unload each vessel container for Christmas that are sitting outside the ports. And then there's about another 100 or so out of China and another 40, I believe, out of Europe. Now, these are all shipping containers that are global, not just U.S., that are sitting in the waters not being unloaded, which is really intriguing because this is a global issue. And so when you look at that type of supply chain, you're talking about a supply chain that has a legacy system that's inefficient, where it's just waiting on people, and a lot of them are saying it's COVID and they have to deal with it. But those things, when they come, these are more, non-perishable items, toys, Christmas, etc. But then you talk about toilet paper, everything else. They ship on these shipping containers, and so you're going to deal with that glut that's coming. I think that'll come within the next 3 weeks very fast, and that's not even cyber.
Let me read a little bit more of this article. It says Crystal Valley Cooperative, a Minnesota agricultural supplier, said it was breached, but didn't identify its attackers. Alan Liska, a senior intelligence analyst at cybersecurity firm Recorded Futures, said Black Matter was behind the attack and posted about it on its extortion site. Both incidences, the previous one I read about the grain one from Iowa, and this one, the Minnesota one, both incidences followed an intrusion at meat supplier JBS, which led to meat processing plant shutdowns in June. The FBI blamed our evil gang for the attack. The latest alert says that Black Matter might be a rebranded version of Darkseid. Oh, who would have figured that out? Which the FBI said was behind the attack on the Colonial Pipeline. Oh, so the Russian hackers who hit the Colonial Pipeline are now the same ones attacking the food infrastructure supply chain. Oh, wow, what a huge fucking surprise this is. Which the echoes private sector research that found links between Black Matter, Darkseid, and our evil. Well, call me shocked. Darkseid and Our Evil both disappeared after a series of major attacks, although Our Evil has had a rocky return. Monday's alert comes shortly after a September private industry notification from the FBI about ransomware threats to the food and agricultural industry. Here's the quote: ransomware attacks targeting the food and agricultural sector disrupt operations, causes financial loss, and negatively impacts the food supply chain. That notification read, ransomware may impact businesses across the sector from small farms to large producers, processors, and manufacturers, and markets and restaurants. End of article. So as predicted, the clever Russians remarketed themselves and moved to Ukraine and Belarus and Eastern Europe and are attacking our food and energy. And let's pray to God they're not successful in hitting the energy in the north during the winter, which no doubt that's number one on their to-do list. And they seem to have a good record thus far. So God
Tal,
help us.
I want to make just two quick points here. Um, One is on the Russian thing about if it was false or not. The only thing that turned out to be false was the Trump's personal involvement,
Right.
or his supposed
Yeah,
collusion.
yeah.
But there was the Senate, the U.S. Senate committee investigating it on a bipartisan basis concluded that Russia itself was involved in trying to manipulate our election. So I mean that's
Right.
not really that controversial. Okay.
Yes.
The other thing I wanted to point out, and which I didn't tweet out today, because I just think this ransomware thing is becoming like an everyday event. It's not even news. That Sinclair Broadcasting, which is the largest television station owner in the United States, had a ransomware attack over the weekend. More importantly, on Sunday. What's important on Sunday in the United States? The National Football League. Okay. And they had a ransomware attack. I don't know from whom. We could assume from whom, but they had a big attack. I didn't even bother tweeting it out because it's like, oh, another ransomware attack. It's almost like it's. I hate to say it because it's almost like a school shooting or something in this country now.
Right.
It's like an everyday
At the
occurrence.
But
risk of making us all paranoid, I think we should also add transportation systems to the list. I know 12, 15 years ago, when we were, I was serving in the Board of Regents at the University of Minnesota, and we were working with the Metropolitan Council to extend the light rail train system between Minneapolis and St. Paul. And since we have campuses in both cities, it made sense to have, station on campus. And we really had to work smartly to ensure that the light rail didn't pass by sensitive biological research buildings, by our hospitals. So I don't think that it's too much of a grasp to just imagine that transportation is also on the hit list.
imagine that nightmare scenario where they hit the energy around the north, northeast, and Chicago and whatnot, like the UK went through for totally different reasons, not hacker related. That was more Brexit related, politically related. But like the Colonial Pipeline, imagine that's done in the middle of winter, and so people aren't able to drive, and then they attack the and also the energy for the houses. So your house doesn't have heat or electricity, and you realize I'm going to die if I don't move, but your car has no gas to go anywhere. So this is a very concerning, realistic scenario. By the way, in case you doubt that this is a realistic scenario, and somebody did mention school, a very apt from an American perspective, the regular tragedies of school shootings. Notice, though, that unlike school shootings, the White House just held a summit last week, Wednesday last week, of 30 countries to come together to address these ransomware attacks. And Russia was not invited. You can probably figure out why. So that's to give you the indication how seriously Joe Biden is taking this issue, as he knows he should. He's being told by his advisors exactly what I'm telling you. This shit is coming. This is the plan. Watch the fuck out. We need to start preparing double time. Let's get, by the way, everyone in the government's now being issued hardware keys for all of their devices. as I've been saying as well, that everyone else should get their own keys for their own physical keys to secure their own devices. So they're going through, they're preparing. We see the headlines. Which is totally relevant to this whole scenario I'm telling you about, and it should indicate to you that this ain't no game and ain't no smoke. This is the government is sending out the signals to create the structures to address these threats, because they know these threats are very real. By sending out all the hardware keys, by bringing 30 countries together on a very short notice to address ransomware, to operate collectively, and all government agencies and all big tech companies, the government, the Biden administration is telling all big tech companies, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, what have you, come together. Your security teams need to operate collectively and have channels to coordinate on all of this stuff. And all big American companies, the Fortune 500s, all of your cybersecurity teams need to coordinate, because we need to be watching each other's backs at all times. This is happening. We've been reading these headlines in recent weeks, like about 2 weeks ago. And there was one last week, the 30 countries coming together. That ain't normal. That ain't the normal course of business. That means shit's real. By the way, the governments are reactionary. They're very slow to address these things traditionally. So the fact that the government's doing an all hands all of our 30 favorite countries come together, we got to watch each other's backs. We're trying to get our ducks in a row and our shit together here domestically in the US, but we need to go even further and cooperate with you, all of our allies, against this massive threat, because this is the beginning. Make no mistakes. This is the analog to the beginnings of a massive cyber war.
And Tyler, I just want to add one other point too. It is an online offline system of legacy, so the software and cyber, I'm deep on that. But you're also talking about the shoremen and the ports, which they say are open 24 hours. They're not open 24 hours. The truckers won't come in. So you're right. You've got such inefficiencies of legacy systems. And to Lakeisha's point earlier about trains and everything else or infrastructure, we're just dealing with old systems. And it's sad because,
and by the way, it is not China currently telling all their people. I'll find someone in the BB and Poppy or people in the audience we can find the headlines that in recent days, people who know Chinese experts, opinion thought leaders are saying it sure seems like Uncle Xi is preparing China for kind of war-like scenario. We will find those headlines for you. I've seen them myself. We haven't really shared them. If we have, maybe only once or twice. But there are Chinese experts saying, like, this is really peculiar. All of this tightening down, locking down, all of these policies, exerting all of these controls in kind of rapid fashion. What's really going on here? And some of the Chinese experts are saying, it sounds like this is what he would do if he thought there was a real material conflict on the horizon. So
agreed.
Okay, the next big article. Are you ready for this? Facebook posts an odd thread, a Twitter thread, which I have ready. We'll read it together. It is interesting. And Michelle sent it to me in my DMs yesterday. Thank you for that, Michelle. Facebook posts an odd Twitter thread attacking 30 unnamed journalists, quote unquote, finishing up a coordinated series of articles based on thousands of pages of leaked documents. So let's read this article first, and then we'll actually read the thread. Okay. So it says the company decried the use of embargoes to coordinate a coming up series of reporting on thousands of pages of leaks, despite regularly using embargoes itself. That's just a stupid point to make, actually. All tech companies use embargoes. They're not decrying the point. That's not what you'll see for yourself. How stupid that point is that they just made. That's not the issue that they're addressing. in an attempt to get ahead of reporting that will seemingly make Facebook, already reeling from weeks of revelations from a whistleblower, somehow look even worse, the company has adopted an increasingly popular strategy among some corporations, posting through it. On Monday, John Panett, Facebook's vice president of global communications, tweeted a short thread from the company's official Twitter account, casting aspersions on dozens of journalists getting ready to report a series of articles based on thousands of pages of documents from the company. Here's a quote. We'll read through the quote because we're going to actually read his Twitter thread. And then the article says, for weeks, the company has been experimenting with how to undermine the impact of the internal documents secured by the whistleblower Frances Haugen before she quit and blew the whistle, publicly testifying in front of the Senate subcommittee. The company has tried characterizing the documents as stolen and toyed with emphasizing that Haugen did not work on this or that specific team and thus did not have an expert opinion on the documents she leaked. Those lines have mostly fallen flat. Oh, really? And so Facebook's new strategy is to suggest a malicious conspiracy among journalists out to get the company. That ain't a conspiracy theory. That's exactly what the fuck you're doing, as you will soon see. You've already been doing it. Past tense. The New York Times has written 20 pieces in the past 2 weeks trying to take down Facebook. So has the Washington Post and all of your friends. We read one yesterday from the Next Web, and you're doing it. Vice is doing this on a daily basis as well, which is who I'm reading this from. You're doing it now. This ain't some cooked up conspiracy theory. We've been watching you do this ever since the Facebook files were started by the Wall Street Journal. So this ain't, they're not cooking up a conspiracy theory. You're doing this you're robbing my house now. I'm not accusing you of doing it tomorrow. So here's the next. The thing is, Facebook is decrying a practice that Facebook itself and pretty much any other company, scientific journal, or publisher regularly engages in with journalists in order to control information and releases the embargo. Yes, that is such a minor point of the guy's Twitter thread, that the fact that they're doing an embargo. Why you are that you're claiming that Facebook is decrying the use of them doing an embargo. No, as you will soon see, that is not at all the dude's point, the fact that they're using an embargo. It is common for various entities to distribute information to journalists on a condition. And he goes on and rants about how it's normal for people to use embargoes. Yes, Facebook knows goddamn well how common it is for people to use embargoes. That's not their point at all. Stop embarrassing yourself by talking about that and making that the focus of your article. That's not the point of the Twitter thread at all, as you will now see. So let's get into the Twitter thread. So as they said, the guy did take to Twitter and did a long Twitter thread that I'll now read. And it's really interesting. And I got to say, well, I'll let you decide for yourself. It says, and let me tweet it out now so you can read along if you so choose to, or save it, or do what you want to do in the Twitter sphere. So I'm going to tweet it to the Tech News Twitter account. There it goes. Okay, so it says, from Facebook Newsroom verified account, we expect the press to hold us accountable, given our scale and role in the world. But when reporting misrepresents our actions and motivations, we believe we should correct the record. Fair enough. Over the last 6 weeks, including over the weekend, we've seen how documents can be mischaracterized. Obviously, not every employee at Facebook is an executive. Not every opinion is the company's position. Again, look, where's my clapometer? You're killing them, dude. You're nailing it, because that's exactly what they're doing. They're taking documents that Joe security guard made a quote in some, on slide 27 of some, PowerPoint document that was seen by 5 people in a meeting in Facebook, and the journalist is leaking to the Wall Street Journal saying, look, somebody in the company felt that the AI was not totally effective in reducing hate speech.
Nailed them.
Got you. You're a company of 100,000. We found somebody expressing an opinion on slide 57, paragraph 3, subsection 32A. And I quote, I'm not so sure this is a good idea, Bob. Got you. Facebook headline. Facebook, thinks this, Facebook thinks that. No, Bob, on the director of, no particular important role, who no longer even works there because he was an idiot, said in one document or in one email, 5 years ago, X, which is no longer relevant. And you're writing big headline pieces, and your friends that work at the other publishers are jumping on the train. They're doing the dog pile. Dr. Fran showed the receipts yesterday. They're all doing it. They're all ganging up and repeating this nonsense, quote unquote, leaked files, revelations that are, coming from Bob, who, it's ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous. And Facebook is spot on in what they're saying here. Over the last 6 months, including over the weekend, we've seen how documents can be mischaracterized. Obviously, not every employee at Facebook is an executive. Not every opinion is the company's position. Spot on. Exactly right. Right now, 30 plus journalists are finishing up a coordinated series of articles based on thousands of pages of leaked documents. We hear that to get the docs, outlets had to agree to the conditions and a schedule laid down by the PR team that worked on the earlier leaked docs, meaning the Wall Street Journal. So the Wall Street Journal is telling all the other journalists, hey, if you're going to be part of this, we're going to do this together. We're going to make the biggest stink we can, because it's not even about us, the Wall Street Journal, inflicting damage on Facebook. It isn't even about us getting credit for finding these files. We want to exacerbate, fan the flames, throw gasoline on the dumpster fire as efficiently as possible. So we're allowing you, our competitors in the New York Times, the Washington Post, yada yada yada, we're inviting you into this feeding frenzy because our objective is to inflict as much damage as possible on Facebook. We're allowing our competitors to join in, something you wouldn't do if your real purpose was to eat the whole, you're the lion, and if your objective is to eat the whole zebra yourself, that's normally what the lion does. But in this case, the lion's like, no, because you're not being a lion, you're being a fucking hyena, and you're inviting the whole pack in because your whole point is to inflict as much damage as possible. And that reveals your motives. Your motives is you're trying to sabotage. And you know why all the journalists are unifying in this effort? Because Facebook is killing them. Facebook is stealing their milkshake, slurping up all that ad revenue that they used to have the monopoly on. And in comes Facebook with their ad network, and they got a much better mousetrap. Everybody and their brother no longer advertises to newspapers, and they're advertising on Facebook because it's far more effective because all the data. And they know
Excuse me,
this.
Tyler.
Hold
Ken.
on. And that's why they're like, you know what? We got to gang up, and now that they're they're kind of got, we already inflicted a little bit of wound on them. Now's our time to go in for the kill. So we're all going to do this together as a pack of wild hyenas and take down this big zebra, Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook. We're going to do it as a big coordinated plan. Okay, yeah, that's what you would do, and that's what you're doing. But to do that, is the technical way to do that is you have to get everybody who participates to agree to a schedule of when things get released. Because if somebody goes first, right, and says, I got the information, thanks for sharing the information, we're going to publish it right now, here we go, and everyone's like, whoa, no, we got to do this in a coordinated plan, like a bank robbery. You can't just go run in there by yourself, dipshit. We got to work as a team here, because if you run in first, then you get to eat the whole zebra by yourself, and that ain't how this works. We got to all eat the zebra simultaneously. So we can't be greedy here. We all got to work together and inflict as much punishment on Facebook as possible. So that's what they're doing. The Wall Street Journal, it has a schedule. It's called an embargo. You're at this time on this day at noon, New York time, October 28th. That's when you release the first article, and we're all going to do it simultaneously to draw as much attention and to create as much of a brouhaha as possible, because we want to inflict damage. We're not even worried about making the money for ourselves. We're going to split the zebra 30 ways. Because this ain't about enriching ourselves. This is about inflicting damage on our main shared competitor. Now you see what's really going on. But the point that the Facebook is making in saying that right now 30 journalists are finishing up a coordinated series of articles based on thousands of pages of information, The point in saying that is not to criticize the use of an embargo, like the Vice article was trying to say, that somehow Facebook, you're a bunch of hypocrites. You use embargoes all the time, and now you're criticizing the Wall Street Journal for using an embargo in doing this wrong. No, that's not what they're concerned about. They're just concerned that you're mischaracterizing the documents. Right? Does everyone see what's going on here? That the Vice article is just complete phantom framing of what this Twitter thread is really about. Next tweet. A curated selection out of millions of documents at Facebook can in no way be used to draw fair conclusions about Facebook. Internally, we share work in progress and debate opinions. Not every suggestion stands up to the scrutiny we must apply to decisions affecting so many people. So there will be things in documents by, Susie, security Susie, who are not the official position of Facebook. It's some some thought that she had, during lunch at El Pollo Loco that she decided to put in the PowerPoint presentation she showed, later that afternoon at work. A curated So the next one, to those news organizations who would like to move beyond an orchestrated gotcha campaign, we are ready to engage on the substance. John Panett, VP Communications. And that's genius. Why? Because as I told you yesterday in this room, Facebook would love to comment on the crackpot findings of these journalists because they're intentionally cherry picking information that they think makes Facebook look bad and then try and make them look even more bad in the posts they write about their cherry picked data points, which is not journalism. That's activism. And if they were doing journalism, they would find something in a document and then reach out to Facebook, as this guy's saying, hey, we're right here. The phone's open. Go ahead and give us a call. I'm your guy, John Panett, VP of Communications. That's my role. Happy to answer any questions you might have about any documents you might find. But you're not going to call me and ask me about that because we can actually tell you what's really going on about that point. And then you've got no story. You've got your whole phantom corporate espionage terrorism attempts fall very flat because the reality of what Susie said after her lunch at El Pollo Loco with the security team, here's the full context about that. That was 3 years ago. Here's what has happened since then. Yada, yada, yada. You have no story. And just like they did over the weekend when Wall Street Journal came out with a new article on Sunday saying that the AI team is only removing 3 to 5% of hate speech. And Facebook, an hour later, does a post saying, no, that isn't relevant at all. We don't use AI to remove hate speech. Fine that it's only removing 3 to 5%. We do remove 99.995% of hate speech. So the fact that you're making a headline that the AI only removes 3 to 5 is giving the reader, you're intentionally trying to misinform your readers that we only remove 3 to 5% of hate speech by saying that the AI only removes 3 to 5%. We don't use AI. We have dozens of other tools to remove hate speech. So stop confusing and creating misinformation campaigns. Stop trying to confuse and giving misinformation to the public about what's going on, because you already did it once. You already got people thinking that Facebook's bad for young girls when we had to show you the document of that you cherry picked that data point from to show you that, in fact, no, young ladies think overwhelmingly that it actually helps them. So we're here. The phone's open. You got your witch hunt you're cooking up there, and you've got your corporate terrorism all planned out. You're going to try and take us down with a whole bunch of cockamamie, misconstrues of some, quotes that Bobby and Betty made, 10 years ago at a lunch at El Pollo Loco. And we got the teams here and the executives here who actually make the decisions that can tell you what's really going on with all of those little cherry picked data points that you're going to try and cook up together. We preemptively know you're doing it. Our phone lines are open. If you're interested in doing that thing called journalism, where you're supposed to, when you find a document somewhere, you're supposed to contact the people and be like, hey, we found something. We'd like to get your comment on this. You're not interested in getting their comment because their comments are going to nullify your whole terrorism campaign. You're a bunch of fucking Al Qaeda terrorists. You're journalistic terrorists. You've degraded yourself to the fucking ISIS of journalism. Is that why you went to journalism school, so you could be on Team ISIS?
You think that's maybe a bit of an exaggeration, as you know, they kill people, and this is just bunch
It's
of
it's
journalists.
it's about similar to what they do to Facebook. I'm doing to them
No,
what they're doing to Facebook.
But Ken, I was going
no,
to pop in and ask you a question. But
okay.
if those reporters or 30 journalists are colluding, is that, and you know, because I'm more techie than law, but isn't that collusion or conspiracy or racketeering? They cannot conclude, or they
Well,
cannot conspire to
they could
organize.
for this. I mean, because they're not conspiring to do something with pricing. So most of that antitrust collusion issue is regarding pricing. They can't collude together about like what they're going to charge for a publication, or about whether they're going to put up a paywall. If you put up a paywall, but I mean, there's nothing really. I think it's a First Amendment issue actually. If they want to cooperate on a publication, there's nothing precluding it. In fact, probably the First Amendment would protect it. But I would take a strong
That's
exception.
interesting. Thank you for that enlightenment. That's intriguing to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I would take strong exception to equate this, by the way, to Al Qaeda that blew up the World Trade Center.
Well, that in
Okay,
their
I mean,
mind, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to blow up their version of the World Trade Center, which is Facebook.
But Ken,
here,
I see what Tyler's saying, because on one side, you know, big tech is wrong in big tech, and a lot of this is more systemic than just a company, you know, and its economics, and it goes down different ways. But you know, I run a tech company, and I agree with Tyler. You know, you can take, if these people are working with something or they say something, where's your defense if it's already, you know, the decision's made in the public arena, good or bad? And
no,
so
I understand what Tyler is saying. It's just people sometimes get into hyperbole, and they take every bad thing and draw it to an extreme. Not to say if it's not a bad thing, but and they say, okay, this is like he's saying this is equivalent to Al Qaeda, or people equate things to the Holocaust all the time. Everything isn't that bad. Everything that's bad is not super 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 bad. Okay, Facebook's a big company. They'll figure out how to defend themselves.
Okay,
You
how
know,
how do you feel about the term corporate terrorism?
that may be fairer if you
Okay,
want to use that.
that I
yeah, yeah, I see what Tyler's saying, and I agree with you, Ken. It's both, because
Yeah.
I look at it on one way or the other. I just think the injustice is injustice, but I agree with you, Ken. You can't compare it to the same.
Yeah.
But a lot of people aren't doing anything like they used to, like me and
I feel
you.
like
They only read headlines, and they won't read the rest. They won't do the research. They will not, at least in America, right? They will not
Yeah.
do any of it. So they'll just be like, "Oh, these bad people! I can't believe it," and you know, that'll be it. And it's kind of sad, both on both sides. So yeah.
I'm not pretending to be a journalist. I'm not trying to. I take liberty to add comedy into what we're doing here. I take comedic license to take a comedian's approach to this ridiculous situation. I'm not trying to do concrete
I
news in
understand.
this sense. Yeah,
That's John Stewart's excuse, by the way, which I
yeah,
don't know.
precisely
Always
right.
buy.
Yeah,
That's John Stewart always claims he's a comedian, though he influences more people's opinions than most journalists. But okay, so which is interesting. But here's the other thing, Tyler. You just made this whole other argument 5 minutes ago
yeah.
on a related issue
Uh-huh.
about the threat with the cyber terrorism, and the problem that we're going to have, and some other people chimed in about the same thing,
Uh-huh.
that half of America doesn't believe what the other half of America believes because of all the disinformation. So if you start with that premise that whole disinformation is a threat to the United States, and Facebook's is knee deep in whether intentionally or not, because of their algorithms, okay, of promoting this disinformation,
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's not the end of the world if the other 30 journalistic companies make a dent in Facebook, okay, simply to get them, let Facebook maybe get out of the news business, so that they're not, they can't possibly be doing disinformation.
Right.
Let them go.
Yeah, we read that headline last week where they said they're going to do less politics, more friends in the newsfeed.
That's
And
right.
at
See,
at this point, it would be interesting to compare the amount of misinformation coming out of the Wall Street Journal, because I don't go to Facebook assuming everything is God's gospel. I don't think I'm reading the Ten Commandments when I read Twitter. There is the assumption that things that people read in the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times is supposed to be the gospel. They claim it is the gospel. Facebook isn't claiming we're the fucking gospel. That's the huge difference.
Maybe I can quickly add something to that. I think yeah, one of the commitment the company is taking is to improve fact checking globally, because it works well in some countries, but there are countries where we don't necessarily have fact checking partners. But essentially, it's a user sharing a link with their network. So Facebook doesn't produce piece of content that are misleading. So I think it's just improving the ranking and maybe the spread of these information, if maybe the fact checking report is flagging it as a false information. But that's the effort we actually making. And now there's something called Facebook News, which we work with media outlet, and those media outlets are likes of the one that just been mentioned here earlier. So I just think it's important to differentiate what spreads fake news, and how do we work with actual legit news outlets. So those are two different things.
Okay, so next big story is Sundar Pichai, he's the boss at Google, calls for the creation of new U.S. federal privacy regulations and stresses the importance of staying ahead in AI, quantum computing, and more. And that means he's talking about China. When he talks about we need to stay ahead in AI and quantum computing, who do you think he's talking about staying ahead of? Botswana? With all due respect, no. Nor Sweden.
Norway, of course, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's talking about China. And because he's intimately familiar with these matters, because Google is one of the leading quantum and AI companies, but on both those fronts. Google is very much is leading the world in AI and quantum computer outside of China. He understands that his main competition is not in the US, it's in China. And
And Tyler, one quick point.
yeah,
Kung-Fu Lee's book, AI 2041, he was the president of Google China.
so he knows. So my point is this is a really interesting article where he's calling for federal tech regulation and investments into cybersecurity. Well, why does he want investments into cybersecurity? Is someone going to be hacking us or something? Are we heading into? Is there any real threat there? Someone's going to? What's the problem? In a wide-ranging interview with the Wall Street Journal Tech Live conference that touched on topics like future of remote work, AI innovation, employee activism, and even misinformation on YouTube, Alphabet CEO Sundar Pichai also shared his thoughts on the state of tech innovation in the U.S. and the need for new regulation. Specifically, he argued for the creation of a federal privacy standard in the U.S., similar to GDPR in Europe. He also suggested it was important for the U.S. to stay ahead in areas like AI, quantum computing, and cybersecurity, particularly as China's tech ecosystem further separates itself from Western markets. Oh, what a shock. In recent months, China has been undergoing a tech crackdown, which has included a number of new regulations designed to combat tech monopolies, limit customer data collection, and create new rules around data security, among other things. Oh, gee, are they worried about some kind of retaliation, perhaps? Although maybe major U.S. tech companies, Google included, don't provide their core services in China, I wonder why. Some who did are now exiting, like Microsoft, who just this month announced plans to pull LinkedIn from the Chinese market. Oh, now I see what's going on. Oh. Pichai said this sort of decoupling of Western tech from China may become more common. You think? God, why didn't anybody tell me? We're meeting here every day. Somebody could have warned me. Give me a little heads up about this decoupling, about the hacking, about more security. And Google's boss telling the government we need to take cybersecurity more seriously, because China's are really ramping up here, and they're posturing like they're ready for retaliation. If somebody could have just warned me about all this, that would have been really nice, guys. Thanks for helping me out. He also said it would be important to stay ahead in areas where the US and China compete, like AI, quantum computing, and cybersecurity, noting that Google investments in these areas come at a time when governments were slightly pulled back on basic R&D funding. Here's the quote. The government has limited resources and it needs to focus. But all of us are benefiting from foundational investments from 20 to 30 years ago, which is what a lot of the modern tech innovation is based on, and we take it for granted. So when I look at the semiconductor supply chain and quantum computing, the government can play a key role, both in terms of policies and allowing us to bring in the best talent from anywhere in the world, or participating with universities and creating some of the major long-term research areas. Pichai added, these are areas that private companies may not focus on from day one, but play out over 10 to 20 years. In the wake of increased cyber attacks across borders, Pichai said that the time had come for a sort of Geneva Convention equivalent of the cyber world. That's fucking brilliant, by the way. Adding that governments should put security and regulation higher on their agendas. He more directly argued in favor of a new federal privacy regulations in the US, like the GDPR. I think the GDPR has been a great foundation, said Pichai. I would really like to see a federal policy standard in the US and worried about the patchwork of regulations in states. That adds a lot of complexity. Exactly right. Larger companies can cope with more regulations and entrench themselves, whereas smaller companies, where from a smaller company to even get started, it's a real tax. And there you go. Sundar Pichai.
See,
Hold
now
on.
you're getting me mad. You're getting me mad, Tyler.
He just said it out loud that Google benefited from GDPR against the whole marketplace because, as he just said, the big companies can deal with all of this regulatory red tape because they've got the teams and armies of lawyers to deal with this. Small companies do not. So it actually hinders future competitors. Great point he's making there. And I applaud him for saying that out loud. I mean, we say it in this room, and geeks know this stuff, and it's kudos to Google for being very transparent about that point. And then the journalist says that's a point that's been constantly brought up when Mark Zuckerberg, CEO, calls for regulation too. A more regulated U.S. tech industry could work in favor of the large companies like Facebook and Google that have the resources to address the regulatory hurdles. But a single federal standard could also give big tech only one law to battle against instead of many scattered against U.S. states. Pichai additionally tied consumer privacy to security, even noting that one of the biggest risks to privacy is the data getting compromised. An interesting statement coming only days after Amazon, a top Google rival, saw its game streaming site Twitch hacked. And here's one more quote. I think the internet works well because it's interoperable, it's open, it works across borders, promotes trade across borders. And so, as we evolve and regulate the internet, I think it's important to preserve those attributes, he said. You can look at it from a free market basis and say that advertisers don't want their ads next to content because they think it's brand negative. So, in some ways, the incentives of the ecosystem actually help to get to the right decision over time. If anything, we've been used to this for a while, noting that the best the company could do is to try and explain its decisions. I view it as a strength of the company at a high level, having employees be so engaged and deeply care about what the company does. He's talking about the recent activism going on at the company. So it's an interesting interview, no doubt. There you go. Next up, what to expect. Google, by the way, later today, it's already Tuesday in Asia, and most of the world, honestly. America, as usual, is a little behind. But in about, what do we say?
It's Tuesday on the East Coast. It's only not Tuesday on the West Coast.
Yeah,
You know.
about 10 hours from now, Google's going to have a big live stream event about their new flagship phone, the Pixel 6, which they're going to feature on their new system on a chip architecture, which is going to play into their strength of AI on their devices, which is their real asymmetrical strength over Apple. And you'll notice yesterday in Apple's live stream event, they didn't really even mention AI, because Google's wiping the floor with them on that front, and it makes their devices have an interesting advantage in that space. where you can talk. What you can do with Assistant is going to, the gap between Siri and Google Assistant, I think, is going to widen over time. It's already quite noticeable, and it's only going to widen now with having a dedicated system on a chip architecture inside of the Pixel 6 phone. So,
Tyler,
yes,
I
go
just
ahead.
hope they keep true to their word because of what you said. Because sometimes it hurts the pain when you hear the talk. But I just did a partnership with Cyversity and Brooklyn Austin Associates on diversity and cybersecurity and AI and where AI and cybersecurity are going. And you hear a lot about this in Washington. And I've got my own people, but you're right. If you're a small company and you've got the team and you got the AI, it's hard to buck the system. It is, I'm older, so I can, but it is extremely difficult. And, they say one thing on one side, and hopefully they're true to form because talent is talent. And if it's a skill set, it's a skill set. So it should come up quicker than the bullshit we're dealing with a lot of times on the smaller, I would say startups or smaller companies that are doing great AI, technology, cybersecurity, but they're not able to break that glass ceiling. That's all I'm saying. So
Okay. So the next one is from the Wall Street Journal. Says they have sources that two Microsoft executives, including Brad Smith, the current CEO, told Bill Gates in 2008 that Bill Gates' emails with a mid-level female employee were inappropriate, and Gates agreed to stop and apparently stopped because we didn't hear anything about it, and there was no Me Too movement back in 2008. And apparently Gates managed to put the water on that fire and extinguish that, and that never got out. But it got out now, 13 years later, that he was having inappropriate emails with some mid-level female employee, kind of like he did with his wife Melinda, who was also a mid-level female employee that he ended up marrying. Although the problem with this is he was married to Melinda still in 2008. And that is particularly interesting in light of the story that I shared here 6 months ago about my friend's girlfriend and her friend was dating Bill Gates and swimming at his house and his jacuzzi and whatnot. And I shared that story 6 months ago. That happened back in, that would have been around the 2001, 2002 timeframe. Your mic got cut out, Evan. Or Ken, sorry.
No, I said you actually shared this news just a couple of hours ago
Yeah. In
at the
our
last
last,
tech news.
yeah,
Yeah,
with our American audience, we covered that story again. But
yeah,
all you need to know is Bill's a
you're saying Bill Gates is a player?
Bill's a
He's a
player.
player.
Well, that's all you got to know. So, and I was totally did not believe it at the time, even hearing it from the witness's mouth directly, who sat in the pool with Mr. Bill Gates at his house. And I said, no, you must be talking about a different Bill Gates. This can't be happening. He's married and blah, blah, blah. But now, seeing what's happened since then, she could have been right. So the next one, a hacker breached the Argentinian government's IT network last month, stealing citizens' personal details and leaking some, including Argentina's biggest celebrity, Lionel Messi. A hacker has breached the Argentinian network and stolen ID cards, details of the country's entire population, data that is now being sold in private circles, including Lionel Messi's details. Okay, next up, Intercontinental Exchange's BACCT backed goes public on New York Stock Exchange. And India's CRED, which rewards customers for paying with their credit card bills on time, raises $251 million at a $4 billion valuation. UK-based neobank Zopa, which offers peer-to-peer lending, savings, and credit cards and other services, raises $300 million at a $1 billion valuation. So that's a new UK unicorn right there. Berlin's based mobile banking startup, a neobank called N26, raises $900 million at a $9 billion valuation. Invesco drops its pursuit of a Bitcoin futures ETF filing hours before the first such product begins trading on the U.S. stock market. What's up with that? That's peculiar.
I think, Tyler, the difference, I think Invesco wanted to do an ETF where they actually hold the Bitcoin, not futures. And I think the government's basically said for now they're just going to approve the futures ETFs. Okay, I
Yep.
believe that's correct.
Yep.
Maybe I'm wrong. Is it Invesco trying to do futures or just actual Bitcoin?
They were trying to do futures. Well, it says Invesco drops its pursuit of a Bitcoin futures ETF filing hours before the first such.
Wow, it's a future. That's shocking because I know there's another company that is going to do it, right?
Yeah,
There's
ProShares.
more. Yeah,
New York,
ProShares is going to do it. Why can't Invesco do it? I don't understand that.
that's why I
I
said it's
think
confusing.
Ken, some of these, some of the companies were going to Investico, and I could be wrong as well. I think they were going to try to actually hold Bitcoin to be able to match the futures, so that they wouldn't have that margin spread. And the government, they're not letting you do both, like a.
No. That's what I said. And they would never do both, by the way. But they would. But I thought maybe the Invesco pulled it because they were just trying to do the actual commodity, whatever you want to call it, rather than just the futures. And
Well, keep a commodity in reserve to a proportion to the futures, and
oh,
that would
really?
have been a different
I
model.
didn't. You might know
Yes.
more than I do, Ben, because I've never
Well,
seen it.
that's what I think. I'm not sure, but the market will eventually do this, because you're right. The futures can fluctuate too fast, and so if they had actually a certain amount of that commodity in of itself, just like fractional reserve banking, then it can be more toward a stable coin. You can stabilize it at some point, like a tether. So that's what my understanding is, but I could be off. But I just heard a tidbit about that, and I think that might have been why it's getting shut down, because right now the government doesn't want anything tethered to that, because that allows more of a growth margin on the other side versus if it's just pure futures, pure speculation.
Okay, next up, Economic Times says they've done a report that startups in India have raised $10 billion in the past 3 months. Jesus Christ. For the first time, with fintech, edtech, and SaaS accounting for 50% of the funding, which makes perfect sense because edtech became illegal to invest in China, and those billions of dollars had to go somewhere, and India is the number 2 market. Well, now the number 1 market, now that China is no longer an edtech market. So it made sense that all those billions would flood into India. But we predicted that would happen as a consequence of China, cracking down on the profitability of edtechs. And now we're seeing the aftermath. This is India's booming. Holy cow. Unbelievable boomage for India in 2021.
And Tyler, do you remember that article about 6 months ago where you said, "Can India produce, what was it, a unicorn a week or something?"
Yes,
And we were and
it's
we were
on
saying,
track.
yeah, how can that happen at first? But it's interesting.
It's
Yeah.
happening. They're on track to get very close to 50 for the year. So, the next one, Amazon's Zoox, Zoox, will start testing autonomous cars in Seattle using Toyota Highlander SUVs. Zoox currently tests in Las Vegas, San Francisco, and Foster City, California. This is wild. I was not familiar with this. Oh wow. You got to see this vehicle. It's Amazon's version of the classic autonomous transport vehicle shape, where it looks like a minibus where the doors slide open on the side and people hop in, a little people mover, which a whole bunch of companies are using this form factor. And it was originally pioneered in Stockholm, Sweden, of all places, in Kista, next to Ericsson's HQ, and that was 4 years ago now, by the way. So interesting to see these. They work. They absolutely work. And this is a really sexy, modern, very geeky, sexy version of this form factor of this minibus with the doors on the side that pop open and people jump in, and then the doors close, and you can stand upright inside of it. Very cool. Zoox. Seattle is not a hotspot of autonomous vehicle engineering yet, but it's absolutely a hotbed of computer scientists in general. Zoox co-founder and CTO said in an interview, Seattle's weather is also a big reason to put the Zoox vehicle through inclement weather testing and see how water impacts sensors. Great point. That's going to be interesting because so far all of the autonomous stuff has been primarily in places like Arizona where it doesn't rain at all. Ever, never, never. So, and that's why, in some part, why they're choosing those environments. So they're right. Seattle gets rain. Oh boy, does it get rain. So that's going to be interesting to see how autonomous works in the rain. Next one from CSQ, that China says, here's an update on that crazy missile that confused everybody in the past 48 hours, where it was reported that China launched a hypersonic missile that circled the planet before landing and missing its target by like 200 kilometers or something. And now the headline says China says that recent test was not a hypersonic missile at all. It was a spacecraft. China on Monday denied a report that it had recently launched a hypersonic missile, saying it tested a spacecraft to trial reusable technologies. Next up from BBC, Amazon's Jeff Bezos may have lied to Congress. There it is. And I told you so. That's actually, and now they've figured it out. That's the real juicy bit. That those headlines that we saw a few days ago, that Amazon in India was using data to enrich itself by screwing its own sellers on its platform, by creating competitive products of its own top sellers. That's not the hot issue. That's not illegal. It's shady as fuck. It's sinister. It's gangster. It's morally bankrupt. It's reprehensible, but it's not illegal. What is illegal is lying to Congress under oath. And he did that. When they asked him, are you doing this thing? Are you checking the data on your sellers and then making competitive products as they claim you do? And when the problem is, you can lie your ass all you want when you're at El Pollo Loco. If you're having a nice foot-long tuna Subway at Subway for lunch, which you should do from time to time, you can lie all you want inside of a Subway sandwich. You can say that thing's tuna all day long, knowing goddamn well it's not tuna. That's no problem. The problem is when you go before Congress and they put this large, heavy book called a Bible in front of you, and they have you place your hand on it and raise your right hand and swear to God Almighty. Now you are what's called under oath. And now if you lie, you go to jail. And that's what he did. And that's the hot sauce in that story, that that somebody realized, wait a minute, we found evidence that Amazon's doing this. That's not the interesting part. We already know they were doing that. The problem is they swore before Congress under oath that they weren't doing it, and that's illegal. You can lie at El Pollo Loco, at Chipotle, at Subway, hell, even at McDonald's on the playground. You can lie all you want and stay out of jail. It's not against the law to lie generally. It is against the law to lie under oath before Congress. So now that's why the BBC's headline says Amazon's Jeff Bezos may have lied to Congress. Top lawmakers say Mr. Jeff Bezos and other Amazon executives may have misled them about the firm's business practices.
I'm just wondering, I'm just wondering, Tyler, if the way they can justify it is how do you actually split and something if your machine learning is leveraging some part of those data, maybe that's
I
something
did not
they would have
have
been
sexual
communicating out.
relations with that woman.
Well, no, I think it's quite
No,
interesting because
Tyler, he just came out the hospital on Sunday. Come on now, okay?
no, I was just gonna say that I think it's quite interesting because they became an e-commerce, and in order to be such a powerful e-commerce with their own like SKUs, it probably had to learn somewhere from some kind of data. So I think it's just interesting to see how they will be able to justify it, even if it wasn't intentional. It could have happened because I guess it's hard to split, especially like it's hard to create a clean cut as to what your system uses to learn versus what you believe it's doing. So
Okay. Next up from Jeff G. from CNN. The CDC places ultra-modern city-state of Singapore at highest travel risk for COVID-19. The U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention added Singapore to its list of very high-risk travel destinations. This is truly so incredibly just heartbreaking. Because Singapore was actually the best, really, really the best at managing COVID until relatively recently, pre-Delta.
We were actually discussing this in the back channel. It was somebody that actually had a good answer. It was Cheryl that actually had a good discussion regarding this. But the thing was that the Swedish mainstream media, they actually lifted Singapore as a very, very bad example, and that the world now will catch up with our high death rates in Sweden. See, even Singapore, that has been a shining star, are now accelerating beyond, and see how well we have been doing, Johan.
Well, yeah, thank your lucky stars. You are friends with the countries who, and play a role in one of the countries who makes the vaccine. AstraZeneca is half Swedish, by the way. So, yeah, that kind of makes a difference, that you can do all those vaccines. And Singapore, really, like the rest of Asia, had to wait in line. All the
Well,
nice, yeah,
we
And
didn't
Tyler,
use that.
you know,
We didn't use that
AstraZeneca,
vaccine here, Tyler.
yeah. I'm aware.
AstraZeneca, Astra had bought Zeneca.
Yes,
If you,
I know it's a
and
UK
then
company.
now everyone thinks it's British.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I only know because they're one of my big sponsors in my events, and they have their big campus down in the south of south of Stockholm. In what's that town, Craig? An hour south of Stockholm,
Sodertalia?
Sodertalia. Yeah.
And their head office was in Gothenburg, right? Because I remember going many years ago, was invited by one of their VPs, and they gave me some money for research.
Yeah.
So yeah,
They've got
a
money.
long time ago.
Yeah.
They got money, yeah.
So, it's just sad to see Singapore in this situation, knowing it's a testament to.
Oh, it's not sad. It's part of the plan. I think I mentioned to you all before that they're experimenting with the endemic strategy.
Yeah.
The numbers are going up, but they actually have told the population to change the mindset, not to look at the daily numbers, to actually because they have already reached more than 85% vaccination rate. So right now we are not looking at the numbers. We are looking just monitoring the severe cases and the death, which is still okay.
Yep.
They are slowly opening up the borders. They are letting more vaccinated people from various countries into the country.
Yep.
And that's doing pretty okay. And at the same time, there's still some restriction among the community, as in the restriction in the number of people together at the moment, because they do not want to overburden the healthcare system in the sense that the healthcare workers are pretty tired by now. But they are actually quite positive about it. Basically they are telling the people, don't be too worried about the high numbers, just look forward. There's already light at the end of the tunnel, so we just have to continue to monitor
The sad part
closely
is
and
that
look.
Vietnam, Korea, Singapore, Thailand, all Southeast Asia, had managed COVID pre-Delta. Had the rest of the world been able to do the same, we would never have had Delta, and it wouldn't have been able to mutate. And that's what's sad about it, is we could have been over with this, but the West couldn't handle it, couldn't manage it, and then we get Delta, and so because the West wasn't able to do what Asia had done, then we have to keep battling it, and then it came back stronger, and then Asia's like, fuck, and now we don't have the vaccines that you had, when now you created this even stronger version of it, and you've got the vaccines and we don't, and then it comes here, and then we have to change our plans and learn to live with it. And that to me is the real sadness.
Tyler,
Yeah.
I agree with you that the West fumbled, but let's not forget that mechanically this came through India. And I'm not trying to point the blame,
yeah, it's
but
a
there
lot of
was a
people.
lot of geopolitics. Yeah,
I
there's a
don't
lot
blame
of
India. I don't
people.
blame India for having a billion people. That's a lot
But
of potential mutations.
they had protests in the streets. They were Modi didn't take it seriously either. Is what
That's
I'm
a fair
getting
point.
at.
Fair point.
Well, and when we get into this real quickly, I just it should have just been spread by the WHO globally, and I'm still mad at the pharmaceutical companies because they could have gotten the money for that and just spread the damn vaccines everywhere, and then let the local governments deal with it. So you're right, India didn't have it, but they also didn't have the vaccine, right? I think they didn't even get they didn't get the
No,
third
they
one
had the
until.
vaccine. LS, they had the vaccine, but they exported it because they were saying that they were playing the whole COVID's not real card too.
Oh, really?
Believe it or
Yeah,
not,
but
yes.
Chris, India is a free market country, and Britain had sent to the manufacturers, so they were in contractual responsibility to
You're
provide
right.
the
I mean,
vaccine
The
to
Indian
us.
manufacturers had to fulfill
Yeah,
their
so it's not
obligations as
India's
manufacturers.
vaccine; it was British vaccine.
Okay. Um, oh, there was this one's kind of a big one. The SE, this according to CNBC, America's biggest finance publication network. Really, it's a TV network. The SEC, Securities Exchange Commission, says online brokerages like Robinhood are gamifying stock trading in a report on payment for order flow and this year's meme stock mania. Well, that's the most obvious statement in the history of statements. They agree with that. Robinhood says, yeah, that's why people come to us, because we're using gamification and we make it fun. Yeah, that's the whole point. That's our secret sauce. So for the SEC to say, "Hey, you're gamifying," yeah, exactly, exactly. That's exactly right. Yes. Hey, your name's Tyler. Yep, that's my name. Exactly right. Did you just figure that out right now? That's exactly right.
Tyler,
Yes.
we have Monica in the that want to come up on
Oh,
stage.
okay. Thank you. Welcome back, Monica. It says the SEC said online brokerages enticed to increase revenue through payment for order flow are turning stock trading into a game in order to encourage activity from retail investors. Well, the reality is they have a interface that is very fun to use. Nobody thinks they're playing a fucking game when they're trading stocks on Robinhood. Let's be very clear about that. It's the problem is this, and I've been trading stocks on apps since Interactive Brokers, Jesus, in 1997. Interactive Brokers, it makes Windows, 95 look like the newest version of the Mac operating system. Interactive Brokers looks like the most poorly designed interface of any app I've ever seen in my life. It's an astounding tragedy of a joke. It's a testament to, it's like the pantheon of terrible design. It's just tragically bad. And for whatever reason, these finance apps are just, holy shit, atrociously bad at designing apps. Oh my God, embarrassingly bad design.
It
And
is
then,
powerful, though. It is powerful.
yeah, technically they work great in the back end. Holy shit, if you want split second execution, oh, get Interactive Brokers all day long. If you're a day trader and you're worried about time of execution, get Interactive Brokers.
Thinkorswim with the interface. Once the Thinkorswim came out, it kind of became more sexy, as far as a trading platform. I don't know about the actual tools on the back end, but
Right. But,
By the way, Tyler,
yes.
in fairness, Interactive Brokers, they also handle commodities, and
Yep.
some of these other firms do
Yeah.
not do commodities.
And they let you
So,
short. They let you short stocks, and Robinhood doesn't let you do that. There's all kinds of benefits to Interactive
Robinhood
Brokers.
doesn't
Yeah.
let you short stocks at
No.
all.
No.
I can't believe that.
Yeah.
By the way,
So
Tyler,
my point is that when younger people come out, a startup comes out, two very young dudes in their early 30s make a new mobile only app. Essentially, we know it's kind of born out of mobile to for trading, they're going to do actually decent design because that's how startups work, right? That's kind of table stakes for startups. And that design is how any young person is going to design a young app. They're not going to do it any much more differently than Robinhood did. And yes, compared to the legacy, holy shit, tragically bad design of the older apps, it looks like you've made a video game by comparison. So I can see how all of the grandpas at the SEC think that you've made a video game out of your trading app because it doesn't look like my old, rusty old truck of a trading platform from 1985.
It's not my Victrola.
So anyway.
By the way, Tyler, Monica came out to make a comment about India just now.
Okay, what's up, Monica?
Monica.
Tyler, thank you, Cheryl. Tyler, I'm not sure about the comments on India though, because there is just one thing we've forgotten about the tragedy of Indonesia, Vietnam,
Yep.
that also dealt with Delta. So it's completely fine to say Modi may have done this and that, but I don't think any country has been able to deal with Delta, including the US.
That was my point.
So I can't really understand this, and the Indian diplomacy of the vaccine was forced upon us, being a poorer country. I actually feel that the richer nations get away with a lot of these attempts because they are the ones who actually impose the requirements for us to actually even start producing the vaccine, which is why we currently are touching about 1 billion shots for the entire population, which is the largest in the world. But I'm not really sure I totally understand. I understand what Chris said. I think we can have a problem with Modi, but I'm not sure we can say that we have a problem with how things happened here.
I,
We're
I
right now
meant
at
I
Did
meant
14,000 cases.
Monica, I'm sorry. And what I meant, and for the crowd, what I meant is mechanically, I think the mutation happened in India, correct? That's why they referred to it as the
That's
double
absolutely
mutant
right.
from India. And that's
That's
what
right.
I meant.
And
Okay, I apologize.
my point is it's not their fault that they've got a billion people, because when you've got a billion
And no,
people.
you're absolutely right. It's just, and
and
maybe I
you know
misheard you.
what India did? It showed the humanity of the world when we all uh, came together on Clubhouse to raise awareness and support India in oxygen crisis. And in terms of vaccine, you know, it's an agreement between AstraZeneca and Serum Institute. So Indian government, and plus I had somebody from one of the principal chiefs of Hyderabad come on Clubhouse, and he explained that there are 28 nations within India. Each one was independently doing their thing for vaccines. So, I don't think we can blame the people or governments. It's a crisis that we all have to learn to deal with it.
And I think to add one thing too, when we think about these countries, sometimes I think if we're in the industrialized or first world countries, the population isn't as dense. They don't live in close proximity to each other, like in the West or so forth. In Europe, you have separation zones, but in Africa and parts of Africa, India as well, the population is very close to each other. It's the way the community works. It's very dense. So the spread of any bacteria that's just you have 6 to 8 people living in one home or one habitat or household, versus in the West you might have 2 to 3 people at most, maybe 4. That's your average. So there's always things to consider. And you're right. I just look at it from my perspective that science and technology had it. We can do better, and spending all this money, and it is what it is. But I think you're right. So. Yeah.
Okay, back to the SEC with Robinhood. What's interesting is not that whether or not Robinhood is gamified. That is mildly could be an issue. More to the case is, as it says in this, that the payment for order flow issue, where they're still jumping on this point that payment for order flow and the incentives it creates may cause broker dealers to find novel ways to increase customer trading, including through the use of digital engagement practices, the SEC official said in the report. And they could decide to not allow this payment for order flow, which Robinhood is based on. And if they take that away from them, what the hell is Robinhood going to do? So Robinhood needs to diversify very quickly into lots of other products and features, lickety split. Like they need to become a Swiss Army knife of financial offerings in the event that they lose this payment for order flow mechanism, which enables them to have no cost of trades when people are buying and selling shares without any price to pay, which is, it's because they found another way to pay for it. And if that gets removed, you could see a whole lot of people leave Robinhood very quickly if they have to start paying for orders, unless they can really diversify. So they're going to do that, and they are doing that. So the next, yes,
Tyler,
yeah,
I have another article that's semi-related,
go ahead.
U.S. Regulatory, and that is that the New York Attorney General announced investigations into unregistered crypto lenders.
Yeah, 2 of them, yeah.
So I think it could be a time to...
Yes, and that's more related to Coinbase, because Coinbase wanted to do crypto lending, and the SEC said, no, you can't. And they said, WTF, SEC, because there's a whole bunch of other ones that are doing it, and now they're going after those other ones who are doing it. So it looks like we might not have much crypto lending in the near future. It'd be interesting to see how that evolves.
I think
And
that's a
Tyler, I
good
think a
thing,
lot of this is
personally.
because of Instagram and other places. I see a lot of ads that say, make it, I'm not joking, on my follow feed, make $100,000 trading, whatever, crypto, stocks. And so I think the SEC is seeing that,
Yep.
at least in the West, the millennials are they're just, shopping this up and saying you can make money in.
Ben, what was
Yeah,
your point?
within the Bitcoin community, we don't look at all favorably on crypto lending for lots of reasons. A couple of those reasons are there's probably 3 fundamental important reasons. One is lending is the fundamental cause of inflation in the monetary system in the first place. Expecting a yield back on capital when you're not even taking a significant risk is a strange concept if you think about it. Blacksmiths lending out other people's gold in return for a yield. You need the yield can only come from future money printing. So that's kind of the root of the whole problem that we've got with the excessive money printing. So that would be one reason. Another reason would be it leverages the ignorance of people sometimes when it comes to not understanding that if you're lending your crypto, somebody else has got access to your keys. They won't lend against it unless they do. And therefore, again, you're not self-sovereign with the ownership of that, and somebody else, at some point, there's a finite risk somebody's just going to take everything that you're lending. So that tends to not get factored in. And then the third point, which is kind of minor and in the middle, is really that it's just not worth it. The yields you get on the lending, it's not worth the risk. The yields you get on the lending compared to the yield I wouldn't want to say yield because that sounds like you're going to buy it and then sell it back to fiat, but the benefits in terms of maintaining your buying power of your money in percentage over the years, has been 100 or 200% in good assets. It's just not worth the extra couple of percent for getting a yield. So there's three problems. One's really fundamental, one's technical, and one's kind of in the middle as a kind of balance, probably not worth it. So it's good to hear. I would love to see crypto lending not allowed in general. There are 1 or 2 ways that it is technically possible to do it without losing control. But any of this regulation is really, I think, is good overall.
Isn't it? Do you think it's the case that the traditional finance industry is whispering in the ear of the SEC to to shut down crypto lending?
It's highly possible. I mean, it is a real threat to them as the market cap of crypto as a whole goes up, and people are looking for a yield. Some people are looking for a yield,
right?
Although we try and put them off. But yeah, it is I guess
But
so.
It's a threat.
Tyler,
It's
the
a threat
current
to
SEC,
banks.
Right.
it is the current SEC chairman taught a course on blockchain at MIT, so he totally knows what he's talking about, and
Yeah.
they're definitely gunning for anything that looks like kind of a future promise of income.
Yep. Okay.
I would make another point,
Yep.
and that is that who are taking these coins? Why can they offer this interest rate? And that is that people are professional traders are taking this money and either shorting or longing the cryptos, and they're making a lot more than this 8% or whatever the interest rate is. They're making 25%. They're doubling their money every 12 months. So why not be one of those people instead of letting Celsius or Nexo be in the middle.
For you that doesn't know me, I work with scam and fraud for a living. And the thing is here that this sector you're into now is so infested with scammers and fraud that it actually will be the focus of two major books that are being written right now. The thing is that it is actually a dumpster fire with Ponzi schemes and other ones in this area. So keep away from these ones until it be regulated or at least have become stable, because there are so many millions of dollars that have been scammed out of people in different coins in multiple different schemes. Johan Dan.
I would just say a couple of things, if that's all right, and then I think Tyler wants to move on. Uh, agree with all of that. I would say a couple of things, though. I would object slightly to the concept that you should stay away until it's regulated. That is nanny state, that is daddy tell me what I'm allowed to do mentality. I would say more stay away until you understand deeply yourself and then make your own decision. I don't think that regulation is necessarily properly, it is overall aligned with the interests of the people, and I'm for banning a lot of the crypto, banning lending against it, etc., etc. But make your own decisions about what's sensible and what's not sensible, including things like is it possible to create a reliably winning trading strategy over the long term if you unless you have some asymmetric information. Make sure you deeply understand what you're getting into, I would say. Understand game theory if you're going to go into trading. Understand the probability around it. Understand security if you're going to hold a cryptocurrency, deeply, so that it doesn't just disappear and you don't end up surprised. And at the same time, let's welcome any regulation that can help the average person with that. But difficult to help somebody who's too blind and ignorant to make their own decisions, I would say. So educate yourself as well.
Okay. Next up, Tesco opens its first checkout-free stores. The supermarket new Get Go format allows customers to shop without scanning a product or using a cash register. And Alibaba's making chips. Alibaba unveils custom ARM-based server chip for cloud computing data centers. And Toyota has gone from lobbying against EVs to spending billions on battery development. Thank God. There you go, Toyota. Joining Team Battery here. It's one of the... I think they're still the biggest car maker in the world, are they not? They must be close.
Volkswagen.
Yeah,
Volkswagen.
yes, Volkswagen is, yeah. So that I welcome that good news. I would love a Toyota EV. My family's been driving Toyotas since I was born, and we've had, I don't know, 2 of them. So holy
FYI, Tyler, they actually had a Toyota RAV4 EV that was made partly together with Tesla.
interesting.
Yeah.
So the next one is from Cheryl, that from Burma, Myanmar, and emotional scenes, and it's a bunch of amazing photos that I just tweeted from a Singapore's news called CNA, Channel News Asia. Emotional scenes outside a prison in Myanmar, where after hundreds of political prisoners were freed due to pressure from the ASEAN leadership, which is all of the Southeast Asian countries, who were having a summit. And they didn't invite, and this was a huge debate in Southeast Asia in recent days, was the military junta leadership going to be invited to join the other prime ministers of the other Southeast Asian countries in their meeting, which is happening, in recent days. So they ended up deciding in the past few hours they're not inviting them, interestingly. And one of the conditions, I guess, that one of the pressures they were saying is, you've got your people locked up, for protesting your military coup. That ain't cool. Why don't you go ahead and release those folks? So they're now releasing a lot of these. They've hundreds of political prisoners. There's still thousands that are still they should release, but that's going to be interesting because those people who, many of whom were arrested, were people who were physically protesting. And boy, it's going to be interesting. It's very possible that the people might take over the military, and some of the military are standing down and joining the people. So what's going on in Myanmar is really, really interesting. But those photos are amazing. I just tweeted those out. And then BB sends in this one from South China Morning Post, that China's version of Instagram, which is called Xiaohongshu, which means little red book in Chinese, is now doing a big apology. And they've admitted that some of the bloggers on their version of Instagram have presented excessively edited images of travel attractions. Users of the Chinese social platform have been complaining about disappointing visits to locations they saw on the app. And they're complaining to the app, hey, wait a minute. I saw this really beautiful photo of this Chinese beach on the Chinese version of Instagram, and then I went to that beach, and this beach looks nothing like the beautiful photo in the app. WTF, Jiangshu. So Jiangshu is apologizing now, saying that yes, people are taking a little too many liberties with their editing of their photos, making these locations look a little too beautiful. The highly filtered pictures have recently become a hot topic on Chinese social media with the hashtag I won't trust Jiangshu anymore. And how powerful are Jiangshu's filters? Trending on Chinese version of Twitter called Weibo. The two hashtags attracted 460 million views and 350,000 discussions by Monday morning. Here's a quote. If it's okay to Photoshop promotion pictures for tourist sites like this, I can turn the brushes downstairs in my neighborhood into a Norwegian forest in any minute. I can turn the bushes downstairs in my neighborhood into a Norwegian forest. One of the most upvoted comments said, others argued that the problem lies with the bloggers rather than the platform. Yep, exactly. The controversy came as Beijing has been tightening controls over the country's tech industry. Jiangshu became a target of the cyberspace crackdown. Last week, Bloomberg News reported that Shanghai-based firm is weighing a Hong Kong IPO to raise $500 million. So now Chinese are falling victim to their own scams of over-edited images in their version of Instagram. That's quite funny.
Tyler, I think the platform has some blame because they amplify.
Yeah, but they don't know if the images are edited, and they're not really responsible. And this is the heart of Section 230, is they're not responsible for what idiots do on their platforms.
But one could argue that if you doctor them up, they're more likely to be amplified.
Well,
because they are going around.
Not necessarily, because they also give the filters, right? Like Instagram provides filters.
We can't hear what you're saying, Maria. It sounds like you have like a pillow over your microphone. Something's covering your mic, it sounds like.
I think she was saying not necessarily because they also offer filters, but I think that's as much as I could make out.
Well, yeah. Oh, now that's an interesting point, is maybe they're responsible because the editing is happening in the filters in the app. It's happening in the app. Right. And then, now I got a bad echo. Who's Cammy? So if this is purely due to the filters in the app, then maybe in some sense they might be responsible. They're giving too many tools to people.
I actually was talking about their algorithm.
No, I know you were. I get that. I'm just saying that the algorithm might not be intentionally trying to deceive people, but if people like this beautiful image precisely because it's overly edited, then it becomes a bit viral and everyone sees it and they get a total misinformation, a visual misinformation of what that location looks like. But Instagram is quite full of this as well. But I can imagine how businesses in China, like resorts, could be abusing this for sure.
Yeah. I think if they're filters, then that's clear cut. But I was thinking that if you doctor them up, they're more likely to be interesting and therefore clicked, and the algorithm amplifies that.
It says their apology came after users complained on social media about their experience following travel guides in the app, only to find out on actual visits that the places are poles apart from the skillfully retouched images they saw. One of the most well-known cases involved Pink Beach in Fujian Lake in China's southwestern Yunnan province, which often appears online in dreamy pastel images, but in reality is more akin to the color of red bricks.
Because the pollution is dirty, so I'm laughing. But yeah, China's Xi'an is known to do this a lot, where you're looking at something that looks like Hawaii, and it does not look like Hawaii when you get there. So I
Ah,
think that's what's going on.
yeah.
That's literally, and this wouldn't be so much algorithms. This is, in my opinion, in my experience, this is humans doing this just to sell it to you, so you'll go there, and it's just the way it
I want to
goes.
see how much they're editing these photos. I can see just looking at the Google photos of Pink Beach, I see why people would go there, because they, in some of the crops that they make, it's crazy how the waves, the sand under the waves is pink, so it looks like the water itself is not blue, it's pink. And yet then I see actual, like, unedited photos, uncropped photos, and yeah, this is not like a place you would want to go to, but it can be cropped to look very interesting.
And the tourists spend a lot of money in China to go there. You know, the
Yeah,
working class, they spend a lot of their vacation money because they haven't been to that Providence or whatever
yeah,
to go there. And that's why, yeah.
funny. Okay, so the next one is, we covered Alibaba's making chips, and Bloomberg reporting that Beijing is managing a real-world minority report. This is Bloomberg, so take it for what it's worth. Here's the headline. Beijing is managing a real-world minority report system that has used mass data collection to prompt investigations into millions of Uyghurs, often for reasons as trivial as downloading a file-sharing app, according to report. Secretive body leads Xinjiang's hunt for pre-crime, report finds. A secretive Communist Party organ is taking an unusual hands-on role in directing a vast predictive policing effort in Xinjiang, according to a report that claims to unmask Beijing's political architecture in the far western Uyghur region. The Political and Legal Affairs Commission is managing a real-world minority report system, said Australia and U.S. backed research institute, Australian Strategic Policy Institute. While elsewhere in China, the People Liberation Army is coordinating body that oversees the nation's law and order system without significant operational capabilities in Xinjiang, and the People Liberation Army budget and responsibilities expanded markedly in recent years. It is a party organ as opposed to a government one, and party officials in Xinjiang have preferred for the party to directly control new surveillance technologies, said a report. Co-author Vicky Xiaozhongzhu of the group that reports to China's top executive body, the Central Committee. The report shed light on the system of governance powering President Xi Jinping's crackdown in Xinjiang, where an estimated 1 million ethnic minorities, including Muslim Uyghurs, have been detained, according to the UN. The human rights crisis has caused US, UK, EU, and Canada to sanction Chinese officials and the Biden administration to accuse Beijing of genocide. China said the camps are vocational education and training centers to counter terrorism and alleviate poverty, and it's called genocide accusations the lie of the century. Chinese state media and diplomats have attempted to discredit, which was established by the Australian government in 2001 and has disclosed funding from global defense contractors and Western diplomatic missions. Okay, so thank you to BB for that one. And the next one is from Jeff G. That coal-fired power is on the rise in America for the first time since 2014. In a blow to climate movement, U.S. power companies are ramping up their coal consumption due to surging natural gas prices. And next one, Another Facebook whistleblower just testified in British Parliament. Here's what we know about the allegations. Oh, so Zhang, the one who, she's actually in the AI team at Facebook. And she was saying how she had so much control in all the election meddling and everything that she saw going on in the data. While appearing before a committee of lawmakers in the UK in the British Parliament on Monday, Facebook whistleblower Sophie Zhang, a former data scientist for the company, testified, my mistake, not AI, she's a data scientist, testified that the social media site Facebook is allowing authoritarian governments to manipulate political discourse. Less than 2 weeks after Frances Haugen's appearance before U.S. Senate committee, Zhang's first public testimony further implicated Facebook in turning a blind eye to disinformation campaigns in order to prioritize profits. It's a company whose official goal is to make money. It's more focused on protecting itself, Zhang said. Please stop using that as the main point, because then that means nothing and then nothing happens. You have to stick to the point that they're enabling authoritarian regimes to commit war crimes or crimes against humanity or breaking of laws. Please stay focused on the breaking of laws. Pointing out that they try to make money means fucking nothing. Stop saying it. You're doing yourself a massive disservice by making the key quote of your testimony that it's a company whose official goal is to make money. All companies' official goal is to make fucking money, you dipshit. Stop saying that. That means nothing. You just ruined your entire... You got on a plane, you packed your bag, you went to the airport, you went through the scanner to get on a plane to go to the UK, you ate terrible food, lost sleep just so you could go to say Facebook tries to make money. Are you a fucking idiot? Stop doing that. Go there with the receipts. Go there and lay down the something worth saying. And stop diluting your testimony with meaningless statements like a company's trying to make money. Show that I was in the data science team, and I can tell you the data shows that they are doing something illegal. And then they can do something. You're talking to a legal body who can only do things if they're violating laws. Don't go there and talk about things that they're doing that are legal. Hey, police officer, I just saw somebody doing something totally legal. Go arrest them. That's not how it works. You have to come and say, hey, officer, I just saw somebody doing something illegal. Go do something. Then they can do something. You're driving me nuts, these whistleblowers blowing pointless whistles. During the evidence session, which formed part of the British government's draft of a new bill aimed at tackling harmful content online, Zhang was questioned by lawmakers about her work as a data scientist. Maybe they're trying to get her to say something worth hearing. Oh, you're a data scientist. That's nice. Facebook makes money. Yeah, okay, great. Why don't you actually tell us something about the data, your role as a data scientist? Let us help you actually understand the whole purpose of why we brought you here and why you took time out of a few days out of your life to come do this. We know they're making money, Miss Zhang. We're aware of that. Thank you for that testimony. Can we get back to the actual reason we brought you here? Are they actually doing anything illegal, with data? You're a data scientist. Maybe you could actually say something worth hearing. Zhang was questioned by lawmakers about her work as a data scientist for the Facebook site integrity fake engagement team, dealing with bot accounts, often operated by government-backed agencies, because that's the kind of shit we would love to know about. If you have anything worth sharing about that, Ms. Zhang. She told members of parliament that even though removing fake accounts is part of Facebook's policy, there was a perversive effect in that if I found fake accounts that were not directly tied to any political figure, they were often easier to take down than if I found fake accounts that were. This effect, she said, creates an incentive for major political figures to essentially commit a crime openly. Now, that's getting interesting. You're almost there. Zhang was fired from Facebook in August 2020 for poor performance. I'm starting to understand why. Which she claims was due to her prioritizing eradicating civic fake engagement over managing management orders. Oh, well, that's kind of how it works. They're your boss. They're putting the money in your bank account. You kind of have to do what they say if you want to keep getting that money from them. If you want them to keep giving you money, you kind of have to do what they say is the priority, not what you think is the priority. It's not your company. You can go start a company. I think you could actually get funding for whatever company you wanted to start. If you're a data scientist, you have an incredibly bright future ahead of you. But young people of the world who are joining big companies, they have the money. They put it in your bank to do what they tell you to do. I know it sounds crazy, but that's how it works. It's been working that way for a very long time. I know you don't like it, and you are free. You have an option to go start your own company. That's your redress. That's your solution. You can go start your own company. I know that sounds crazy. I know that's a wild concept. You can do it. That's your option. That's your right. You can work for yourself, and you can create a company, and then you can pay people and you can tell them what to do. Crazy, right? But if you go work at a company, you're not the boss like you were with your parents, because you had these wimpy ass parents who let you run the house, right? And then you go work at Facebook and you think you can do the same. You cannot. You have to do what they say. It's like having real parents. So, in part, you're not to blame. Your wimpy parents are to blame. They raised you wrong. Maybe you can sue them for raising you wrong, and now you're not employable because you had weak ass parents. Go take them to court. Go sue them. Your Honor, I had weak ass parents who raised me wrong, and now I'm unemployable. Go try that. Zheng was fired from Facebook. Before she left, she published an internal memo accusing the company of allowing its self-interests and desires to make profits to interfere with its responsibility to protect democracy. Okay. And you have that right. And they have the right to fire you. It's called fire on demand, fire at will. And you have the right to go start a new company to address these issues. In April this year, feeling responsible for what she saw as Facebook's willingness to let fake engagement run rife through developing countries, Zhang went public in an interview with The Guardian. Her revelations included dangerous loopholes in the social media company's policies to tackle political manipulation and indifference to, and deflation of, the issue by senior management. Here's the quote. At Facebook, the people charged with making important decisions about what the rules are and how the rules are getting enforced are the same as those charged with keeping good relationships with local politicians and government members, she told lawmakers. This creates a natural conflict of interest. It's actually an interesting, but not so. It's an interesting point, but not one that they can really do anything about. During her and when I say them, I mean the lawmakers, because that's not illegal. Again, you're pointing out unillegal things. Please stop telling the police that this person that you want to arrest is doing unillegal things. That's not illegal. That's not how the law works. During her time as an employee focusing on fake engagement, which means likes, comments, shares, and reactions made by inauthentic accounts, she discovered a dangerous loophole in company rules. Okay, well, now we're listening. Whereas Facebook ensures authenticity of personal accounts, it has no policy to regulate pages set up for businesses, brands, and individuals. Okay, so when fake accounts are set up on Facebook by political actors, it allows them to manipulate platform engagement, which Facebook calls coordinated inauthentic behavior, CIB. The most famous example of CIB occurred during the 2016 US election when Russia Internet Research Agency set up a Facebook account or accounts identifying as Americans and used them to influence political debates on Facebook. While the company knew about these practices by fake personal accounts, Zhang unearthed large CIB networks, including in countries from Azerbaijan to Iraq, instigated by fake pages. In Honduras, she found thousands of fake pages boosting the posts of the country's right-wing nationalist president, Hernandez, whose re-election in 2017 is widely viewed as fraudulent. It took 11 and a half months for Facebook to start the investigation into the Honduras CIB campaign. When Zhang raised her findings with senior management, she was told by Guy Rosen, Facebook's vice president of integrity, that threat intelligence would only prioritize campaigns in U.S., Western Europe, and foreign adversaries such as Russia, Iran, etc. The company did not have unlimited resources, he said. Facebook pays more attention to countries like the US and Britain, but also to India because of the importance of the countries to Facebook. She told the committee. Facebook's resources to tackle misinformation differ considerably between nations, she says. For instance, if you want an AI to determine if a content is hate, you need AI that can speak those languages of the country in question, which she said Facebook does not currently have. Many of the issues could have been solved by increased resources, Zhang argued, using her thing called her brain. She figured out that if you have more money, you could do more things, which is a truly profound revelation from Ms. Zhang there. Teams that work on integrity and investigations are chronologically under-resourced, which I think it's a statement of the company's priorities. She says, you don't hear about the ads marketing team at Facebook being chronologically under-resourced, for instance. Right. That's true. But the policing of content in Mogadishu is obviously a lower priority than in America. I think you would agree, Ms. Zhang, that, the Transnistria and these barely legitimate states of 100 people are a lower priority than, say, India of 1 billion people. I think you could understand how that works, that they may not have unlimited resources to police parts of the world that Americans could not only not find on a map and will never visit in their lifetime, they cannot even spell. So Zhang's public testimony is yet another headache for Facebook. Yes, but interestingly, she was saying all of this 8 months ago. And you, the press, didn't give a shit back then. But now that you're on a political mission to terrorize Facebook, you're now willing to listen to Miss Zhang. Now Miss Zhang is very interesting to you. Because now she fits with your narrative to attack Facebook. But you ignored her for 8 months. But now you're not. Very interesting. The former employee detailed how Facebook's algorithms heavily weighting of meaningful social interactions, which is content that generates strong reactions, has amplified divisive content on the platform, fostered hate speech and misinformation, incited violence, blah, blah, blah. But again, everybody knows that, and that's not illegal. So stick to the stuff that's illegal, and then the press can have a field day with that. So interesting. They're bringing her back into the. They're now starting to pay attention to the other whistleblower who's been whistleblowing for 8 months, and you're just now hearing about her. So Apple's iPhone partner Foxconn unveils its first electric cars, 3 different ones, including a bus and a more kind of budget-friendly car, and then a sexy sports car. Foxconn Technology Group unveiled its first electric cars, a milestone that could boost the Taiwanese electronics manufacturer's credentials as a serious EV company. Then Hassan shares this one. Oh, it's the Facebook. Shit. Oh, crap. I got to run. Sorry, we have to pause early. I forgot. I had an urgent meeting. So we'll meet again in 5 hours. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank